Hey everyone, this is Sean Briscom. I wanted to share with you today a simple way that you can legally and ethically keep 80, 90, 95% or more of your tax dollars. Okay? Now, my goal with this presentation is very, very simple. It's twofold. It's number one is to shift your mindset about what is possible from a tax strategy standpoint. And then number two is to elevate your skill set so that you can learn this information, embrace it, take ownership of it, and actually implement these strategies yourself. Now, again, my name's Sean Briscom, and there's a little known fun fact about me. I used to be a diver. When I was 8 years old, I started training and diving at Stanford University with the college coach there. And when I was 14 years old, I moved away from home to live in Mission Viejo, California, and train with Greg Louganis and the whole Olympic team. And I had an amazing experience. I had an amazing career training for the Olympics with that team. I got to travel the world. I got to meet some of the most interesting people that I've ever met in my life. Some of the wealthiest families out there were actually sponsors of mine during that process. And so I was very blessed and very lucky to be able to talk to them and learn from them and grow from them and have just an amazing career. I've been involved in financial services for over 18 years now. And before that, I was a top sales manager at Dell Computer here in Austin, Texas. And at the time, this is back in the day when Dell stock was splitting and doubling every single year, and they were throwing tons of stock options at us, and employee stock purchase program was on fire. It was a huge discount. And so I built a lot of wealth through Dell stock. And in very short time frame, I became known as one of those Dellionaires. They used to call us Dellionaires back in the day. In 1999, I decided to retire or quit working for Dell. And I got a phone call from a buddy of mine who had worked with me at Dell, who had retired as well. And he was one of these guys that was buying domain names and flipping domain names. I don't know if you remember back in the day when domain names were very expensive. They were selling for millions of dollars. He had collected and purchased a bunch of domain names and had flipped them and sold them. There were a lot of names like Dell Mall, Dell Shops, Dell Stock, that kind of thing. And he sold a bunch of domain names to Dell, but he also had a couple other domain names. He had a couple that he had bought from a pig farmer in Idaho, paid about $400,000 for them. And I asked him, I said, well, what are you going to do with those domain names? Are you going to flip them and make some money? And he said, no, let's start an internet company. So in 99, we decided to start one of the very first online shopping malls of its kind. Back in the day, companies like Amazon were out there. They were online, but they were just selling books. Or Priceline.com was just in the travel space. We were the very first company to kind of aggregate all of these different industries together, put them on one platform in a shopping mall setting. And so we did that. We built this company, and in 2000, about a year later, we sold the company for a huge pile of cash. All right, so here we were, 5 guys that started the company. We were all sitting around a table, and we had made this huge pile of cash. And so we were kind of forced with this decision. What do we do with this money? And instead of protecting that money and taking some chips off the table, we pushed all of our chips into the center of the table and doubled down on what we were doing. And so we decided to take everything that we had made from the sale of that company and open up a second company and quote unquote 10x our returns, 10x our investment. That was the name of the game back then. That was right during the dot-com bubble. And very shortly after we did that, the dot-com bubble burst, and overnight, literally, the rug was yanked out from under us, and our $1 million a month lifestyle literally came crashing to a halt. Everything stopped. The venture capital groups that we had worked with said no more funding, no more investment in .com, no more investment in software, in .com stocks, things like that. And it all came crashing to a halt. And so I was forced with a decision at the time. I pulled back, I kind of regrouped, and I started looking at what did the other buddies of mine, the friends of mine at Dell Computer, who didn't do what I did and didn't lose a bunch of money, what were they doing with their wealth? And as it turns out, it was really, really interesting. They had gotten out of the dot-com world and sold their dot-com stocks and exited the market, sold everything and cashed out before the bubble burst, before the market collapsed. And so I asked them what they were doing with their money. What did they do with their money? What was the next thing? And what they were doing was they were buying real estate. Real estate was the undervalued asset class at the time. And so what I did was I just literally just copied them, just followed their coattails, literally jumped in with them. And in 2000, I started another company in real estate lending and investing. We had a mortgage company, an investment company, and we were doing a bunch of other things in the real estate space. And that went on for a number of years, but I had this gut feeling that it was kind of too good to be true, very similar to what the dot-com era was like. And sure enough, in 2008, we were hit with one of the largest recessions in the history of our country. And again, everything collapsed. And I lost a bunch of money again. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because I've done a lot of things right in my life, but I've also done a lot of things wrong. And I'm here to tell you, if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or an investor, and you've had these situations where I call them cycles, wealth cycles, where you build big things and then you lose a bunch of money, and then you build something back up and then you lose a bunch of money. If you've ever gone through these cycles, the first thing I want to tell you is that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. There are outside forces that cause these market shifts and these gyrations that you didn't have any control over. But what would be your fault is if you don't learn from the mistakes that you've made. And so with that being said, here are my biggest takeaways that I got from surviving two of the largest market crashes in history. And so after doing this for over 17 years and surviving two financial crashes, I've learned a couple of things. The first thing that I learned is we need to find a way to keep our wealth safe from everything. Everything from not just market gyrations and crashes, but from taxes. We need to protect our wealth from interest expense, inflation, divorces, lawsuits, everything. You need to learn how to protect your wealth and keep it safe from everything. And Warren Buffett was famous for this phrase. He said, "It's not what you make, it's what you..." That's right, it's what you keep. He was famous for saying that quote. The second thing that I learned is that we need to be able to grow our wealth safely and consistently without risk, without betting on the market or investing in risky deals. We need to be able to learn how to grow our wealth consistently like banks do, and just have that wealth compound and grow forever into perpetuity. And the third thing that I learned was that in order to build massive amounts of wealth like the wealthiest families all do, the first thing you have to learn how to do is learn how to give it all away. That's right. In order to build massive wealth, you must first learn how to give it all away. And so I discovered these things the hard way, but here's the deal. You get to learn from my mistakes. And if you're a fan of Eleanor Roosevelt like myself, she said, learn from the mistakes of others because you can't live long enough to make them all yourself. And so here are some examples of the hard way to build wealth. The first hard way, the difficult way, is by trusting your CPA or tax attorney or financial advisor to help you from a tax perspective in the best possible way. You see, CPAs, tax attorneys, and even trust attorneys are only licensed at the state level. They only have jurisdiction in the state that they're licensed in, and they only deal with people that are in the 1040 world, that are earning individual or business income that has to be reported on a 1040 form. All right. That's not what the wealthiest families do. The second hard way to grow your wealth is by believing that your stockbroker or the market is the place to invest. Now, I think you know as well as I do that after 2008, you can see how intertwined and intermingled these markets around the world are. And so if something happens over in China, it has a direct impact on the markets here in the United States. Why on earth would you leave your wealth up to the whims of the market? It just doesn't make sense anymore. 95% of everything invested in the stock market today is invested with high-frequency trading platforms, robots, and these huge, massive financial institutions like hedge funds and other financial institutions that literally bend the market in favor of themselves, whether they're wanting to invest and grow the wealth or short the market. They move these markets on their own. If you're caught up in the middle of that, you need to figure out a way to get out. The third hard way to build wealth is by believing that making charitable contributions or tax deductions, finding different tax deductions, is a way to lower your tax bill. That is not the best way to do things. That's one way of doing things, but it's not the way the wealthiest families do it. And I'm about to show you what they do. Now, if you want the easy way that's allowed me and my wife to live a life of meaning and purpose, my wife and I got married back in 2008, and all we wanted to do was start a family. Based on my experience as a diver, I grew up coaching kids my entire diving career. And so I always knew that I would be a great dad because I had this great coaching experience, this valuable coaching experience. And so my wife and I got pregnant right away. And unfortunately and sadly, we ended up losing our first child. And it sent us both into a massive tailspin and a depression. But out of that pain and anguish, we were able to meet some friends at our church who were actually going through foster care certification. They were getting licensed in foster care. And they approached us and they said, "Hey, why don't you give it a try, foster care? Why don't you try it out? You never know. Maybe that's what God's trying to show you how to grow your family." And so my wife and I reluctantly jumped into the foster care world. And we were very resistant and hesitant because we had no idea what we were getting into. We were scared to death. We didn't know, what these kids would behave like and how they would act and how they would end up operating inside of our family, if it was even a fit. We had no idea what we were doing. But thank God we did, because as soon as we got licensed, the first two little girls that we got at our home, in the upper right-hand corner, Chiquita and Sarah, that literally shifted everything for us. As soon as we got them in our home and started loving on them and taking care of them, we knew right away that this is what we were meant to do. And so over the last, 10 years now, we've been blessed with 10 little girls that have all come through the house through foster care. I don't know why it's been all girls. I think God's trying to play a trick on me or just a joke on me. But we've had all little girls. We've adopted 2. They're now our daughters. We've had one of our own through a test tube. And so we've built our family through foster care and adoption. And that's where we give all of our time, energy, money, and emotion, is back to these kids that have been from really, really difficult places. All right. That's our passion. That's our purpose in life. Now, what I'm about to share with you, I want to let you know right up front, this is not a fit for everybody. It's not. It just isn't. We don't want to show you this stuff in what the way I put it is, we don't want to build a golden jewelry box if you don't have any diamonds to put into it. So again, this is not a fit for everybody, and that's okay. You can always start this process at a certain level. There's an entry level, and then there's a next level discussion that we can have, but this is not a fit for everybody. And the second thing I want to tell you is, if all you want to do is learn how to evade taxes, this is not going to be the right webinar for you. This is not a system where you can evade taxes. Tax evasion is illegal. Tax avoidance, however, is perfectly legal. Now, if you stay till the end of the presentation, I've got a couple of bonuses, a couple of gifts for you, and an offer that you're not going to want to miss. So grab your pen, grab your paper. I'm going to show you how you can legally and ethically keep up to 80, 90, 95% or more of your current tax dollars so you can stop the bleeding and then start building wealth and start living a life of meaning and purpose, being able to give back more in a more meaningful way. Now, it's broken down into 3 key concepts that I'm going to be showing you. The first key number 1 is how to learn how to legally and ethically keep 80, 90, 95% or more of your tax dollars. I'm going to show that to you first. The second thing I'm going to be showing you is that the way that you're currently being taught, trained, and educated to grow your wealth is actually holding you back, and that the key to collapsing time and growing your wealth faster and safer is by plugging the leaks and plugging the holes and keeping it instead of leaking it out. Okay? The third key consideration, the third key concept here is that in order to build massive wealth, you must first learn how to give it all away. That I know that's an oxymoron, but you're going to learn how to do that in this presentation. In order to build massive amounts of wealth, first you got to learn how to give it all away. Now, key number one, learning how to legally and ethically keep up to 80, 90, 95% or more of your tax dollars. Now, I think you'd agree with me that it's no secret that the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. That's what we call wealth inequality. Now, I want you to see this. This is important. 8 men around the world today have as much as 3.6 billion people. Think about that. Think about that. 8 men around the world have as much wealth as 3.6 billion people. How is that possible? Well, what's happening is the wage gap is getting wider and wider and wider, and there's a reason for that. You know, these families that are getting wealthier and wealthier, are building wealth beyond belief, the ones who are getting richer and richer and richer, they understand something that you don't. And they pass this knowledge and education down to their next of kin. They teach their children how to keep their wealth safe from everything, from not just taxes, but lawsuits, divorces, interest expense, inflation, everything that would eat away or erode their wealth. They teach that stuff to their kids, and they keep that exclusive in their circles, and it's basically unknown to everybody else. John D. Rockefeller is a perfect example of this. The Rockefeller family worth today, the net worth of Rockefeller family today is now worth over $10 billion. How is that possible? He did not start off with $10 billion. He didn't even start off with $1 million, to be honest with you. But over generations and generations, their wealth has continued to grow and compound into perpetuity. And so now, today, there are over 130 family members in the Rockefeller family. And every single year, the family members get together for a retreat that is their annual family retreat. And in 2014, Nelson Rockefeller, who is now the patriarch of the family, he said these words. He said, "The secret to success is to own nothing, but to control everything. To own nothing, but to control everything." So this entire concept that you're about to learn has to do with ownership versus control. Ownership versus control. All right? Now, the wealthy teach the wealthy how to do this. Now, here's a perfect example. Howard Buffett, for example, he was a congressperson, a congressman from the state of Nebraska. He first learned this system, this 1041 trust and foundation system that I'm about to show you. He learned this system in Congress. Most members of Congress use the trust and foundation system. And of course, he taught his son, Howard Buffett, how to grow up and how to live and operate inside of the world of trusts and foundations. Howard Buffett taught his son, Warren Buffett taught his son, Howard Buffett Jr., Howard Buffett II, how to do the same thing. And so now Howard Buffett, the second, has his own private family foundation and operates in the trust and foundation system. In 2000, I don't know if you remember this, but in 2000, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates met for the very first time. And at the time, Bill Gates was going through an IRS lawsuit. The IRS was coming down on him personally as well as Microsoft. They were under this massive investigation for antitrust issues. They were bringing in money from foreign countries and not claiming tax on that money. And so the IRS was clamping down with them. And so Bill Gates met with Warren Buffett for the first time, and their meeting was supposed to be an hour long. And they ended up clearing their schedules and meeting for the entire day. During that meeting, Warren Buffett brought in his tax team and actually showed Bill Gates how to do the trust and foundation system. And of course, 6 weeks later, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was set up. And today it is the largest private family foundation on the planet. Now, in 2015, when Facebook was going public, Mark Zuckerberg met with Bill Gates. He gifted or granted $3 million to the Gates Foundation, and that bought him a date with Bill Gates. And during that time frame, Bill Gates disclosed and taught and trained Mark Zuckerberg on the trust and foundation system, brought in his team of attorneys, his team of tax professionals, and showed this system to Mark Zuckerberg. All right. In 2015, when Mark Zuckerberg took Facebook public, he announced to the world that he was going to be giving or granting 99% of his Facebook stock to charity. In fact, everybody that you see up on this screen has pledged to do the same thing. Warren Buffett has led the movement to pledge your wealth for these wealthy billionaires to take what's called the Giving Pledge. And in the Giving Pledge, you just simply pledge that you're going to give up 90% or 50% or more of your wealth to charity. Now, what types of charities do you think that these people are giving to? Let me show you what it looks like. I'm going to show you Warren Buffett's charity. You can see right here, this is the Buffett Early Childhood Fund, okay? This has its own separate EIN number. It is a private grant-making foundation. It is a 501c3 charity, which means it is tax-exempt, a private, non-operating foundation, all right? Has over $41 million in assets, and it is required to fill out a tax return, a form called a 990-PF. This is important. The 990-PF just stands for Private Foundation, okay? Same is true with Howard Buffett. When you look at Howard Buffett, this is the Howard G. Buffett Foundation. It's out of Decatur, Illinois, where Howard Buffett lives, has its own EIN number. It is a charitable organization, a 501c3, private non-operating foundation, and it is required to file a 990-PF form. All right? Same with Bill Gates. You can look at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Here's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with its own EIN number, based out of Seattle, Washington, where they live. It is a 501c3, private non-operating foundation, has $51 billion in assets right now, and it's required to file a 990-PF, stands for Private Foundation. All right. Mark Zuckerberg has the exact same setup. He has the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation with an EIN number from Palo Alto, California. It is a 501c3, private non-operating foundation, $3 billion in total assets so far, and has to file a 990-PF. All right. Now, if you don't believe that Congress and our government knows about this stuff, I want to share with you this quick video. All right. This stuff is taught and trained at the level of Congress. Congress writes the laws for the tax laws that you and I have to follow, and then they write separate laws for the wealthy and for themselves. Here's an example of what I'm talking about.
Mr. Whitaker, I want to go back to your time when you worked for the Foundation for Accountability and Civil Trust. I worked for many, many years for various 501c3. So it's very interesting to me when I look at the board. Is this a private or a public foundation? Fact. Was that the 501c3? Is it a private or a public?
I don't know.
There are two separate types.
Congresswoman, I don't have the 990 filings or.
But you worked there from 2014 to 2017.
I was.
And you were the executive director for the foundation.
Yes, I was.
But you don't know if it's a private or a public.
I haven't worked for FACT in 16 months, and I in my preparation for this
thank
oversight
you,
hearing.
Mr. Whitaker.
Now, if you don't believe that he understands the game of private foundations versus public charities, you're fooling yourself. You're being foolhardy. Here's the actual 990-PF fund form, and you can see it's a return of private foundation. And right below it, you can see the key here. It's a trust treated as a private foundation. This is the Buffett Early Childhood Fund. Now, when he donates wealth or money to this 501c3, you can see that at the bottom here, section 501c3 is checked off. It is exempt. It is an exempt private foundation. What do you think what type of assets do you think that this foundation owns? What do you think that this foundation owns? That's right. It's Berkshire Hathaway stock. Okay? Now, this is important for you to understand. Bill Gates gives a lot of money away to charity. He's very charitable. In fact, he's pledged to give away 90% of his wealth during his lifetime to charities. Here's an example of what types of charities he gives to. He started that pledge with a massive donation of $34 billion, billion with a B, to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What do you think Bill and Melinda Gates did with that money when he donated it? What do you think that they do with this $3.1 billion that he gave to Gates just last year and 4 other charities? You can see it says Warren Buffett on Monday donated roughly $3.17 billion worth of Berkshire Hathaway stock to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and 4 other charities. The other family charities were his own children's charities. This is the largest contribution in more than a decade-long plan to give away his fortune. This article is also telling. It says now the Gates Foundation is now one of Berkshire Hathaway's largest shareholders. So when you're looking at these foundations, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, this is the actual 990PF. Again, it's a return of private foundation. It is a trust treated as a private foundation. That's important. I'll tell you why later. Zuckerberg has also pledged to give away 99% of his Facebook stock in his lifetime. Let's take a look at his return. This is a return of private foundation for the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, based out of Palo Alto, California. Has the same EIN number as what we showed you earlier. It is a 501c3 tax-exempt private foundation. And you can see here this article, Zuckerberg is donating $45 billion to charities. You can read about the article about his mission to give away or to donate money to his charities. This is the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation 990PF, and this is the assets that he donated in just 1 year, in the year 2016. $1.1 billion worth of Facebook Class B shares. So when these wealthy athletes, Andy Roddick does the same thing. When I was diving at Mission Viejo, my roommate at the time was Lawrence Roddick. His younger brother was Andy. Andy was 6 years old at the time. He used to come to the pool and throw his toys in the pool. We would have to dive in and get them out for him. And so we grew up together, and I've been a good friend of his family for a while. When Andy turned 17 and he turned professional, he met with Andre Agassi, and he asked Andre Agassi one question. He said, "Do you have any regrets?" And Andre Agassi turned and responded to him. He said, "I wish I hadn't waited so long to start my foundation." Well, today, the Andre Agassi Foundation is worth over $180 million. And yes, he does a ton of good work through the foundation. He has the Andre Agassi Foundation for Education, which includes the Andre Agassi Prep Academy in Las Vegas. Nancy Pelosi is another example. Nancy Pelosi has been in Congress for 28 years, 3 decades. Her salary is $193,000. How is it possible that her net worth is over $200 million? If she had invested 100% of her income, her salary, for the last 3 decades with a 10% ROI and gotten it all tax-free, it would only be worth $30 million at most today. How is it possible that she's worth over $200 million? And here's your answer. The Paul and Nancy Pelosi Charitable Foundation. This is a 501c3 private non-operating foundation, and it is required to fill out a 990PF form. So this is how the wealthiest families play this game with the trusts and foundations. Here is the actual 990PF for the Paul and Nancy Pelosi Charitable Foundation. You can see it's located in San Francisco. It is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, and it's a trust treated as a private foundation. Even Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen DeGeneres recently announced to the world that she had created the Ellen DeGeneres Wildlife Fund. And what was interesting was Ashton Kutcher came on her show recently, and he donated through his fund that he runs, donated $4 million. And so I want to show you that interaction here real quickly.
So we do this thing called SoundBench, is we invest in tech companies. And so we found this very interesting tech company called Ripple that we're going to invest in, right? And it runs on this stuff called XRP, which is a cryptocurrency, but basically it's just a way to get value from here to there. The people who run it, this guy Chris Larson and a guy named Brad Garlinghouse, and they run it, and they're talking about the ethic of this company and this platform, and how they actually really care about being an ethical company and giving a portion of this platform away to people that are doing good in the world. And you explained to me that if you weren't doing this, that what you would be working on is that project, right?
Yeah, I would be saving the gorillas, yes.
You would be saving the gorillas. And so we talked to Chris and Brad, and we said, there's this amazing human being. And all they ever do is think about other people they can give to. Whether it's in New Orleans, whether it's in Montecito, whether it's the people that come here, the people out there, you're always thinking about everyone else. And we wanted to show you that people are thinking about you. So, on behalf of Ripple, we'd like to give you $4 million. Now, usually people come out with the big giant check and do the big giant check thing, but we can actually transfer it into Rwandan francs right now, right here, and all we have to do is push this button and it's in your account. Do you want to push it? You want me to push it?
I would like to push it. I'd like to push it real good.
Bingo.
Oh my God. That was the most amazing thing. Thank you. I love you both so much. You know that. And I love Ripple. Thank you, Ripple, for doing this. And now everybody knows you can just send money easily like that.
Okay. Now, there's a reason why they did that. It was for PR reasons, obviously. But if you look at the Ellen DeGeneres Wildlife Fund, let me show it to you right here. This is the Ellen DeGeneres Wildlife Fund with its own EIN number, okay? An EIN number, just so you're aware of, when you file any entity, whether it's an LLC, a company, a corporation, an S-Corp, you generate an EIN number from the IRS, from Treasury, and all the EIN number says is that every single year you're going to file a tax return and let them know what was the income, what were the expenses, how much money is left over, so they can determine if you owe any tax or don't, okay? Now, 501c3 charitable organization like the Ellen DeGeneres Wildlife Fund that's based in Encino, California, this is a private non-operating foundation. It is not a public charity. There's a difference, and I'll explain that in a minute. It is required to file a 990 PF form. PF stands for Private Foundation, okay? So even though the Ellen DeGeneres Wildlife Fund is a charitable organization, a 501c3, it is a private non-operating foundation. It's not a public charity, and that's important. Even Amazon, these articles came out recently that said that Amazon paid no federal tax on $11.2 billion in profits last year. How is that possible? Well, the largest shareholder of Amazon stock is Jeff Bezos and his ex-wife now, Mackenzie Bezos. This is how they pull this game off. This is the Bezos Family Foundation. It has its own EIN number. It is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, a private non-operating foundation, and it's responsible for filing a 990 PF. All right. Here's the Bezos Family Foundation, the return of private foundation. It is a trust treated as foundation. You can see that it's checked off section 501c3. It's tax exempt. And look what this foundation owns. These are the assets of the foundation. In 2016 alone, Jeff Bezos donated 25,000 shares of Amazon.com stock worth over $20 million in just 1 year. All right. Even Mackenzie Bezos, she pledged to give away half of her $36 billion fortune. When they got divorced, she got half of his wealth, right? And she pledged to give away $36 billion under the same giving pledge that Warren Buffett started, that Bill Gates is a part of, Mark Zuckerberg, Michael Bloomberg, and Robert F. Smith are part of. Now, what she's done is she's created her own private foundation. Even our president, Donald Trump, has done the same thing. And I don't know if you remember in the 2016 election when Hillary Clinton called out Donald Trump, she said, Trump has not paid tax in over 30 years. And his response was just simply, that just makes me smart. Even today, Trump believes that he is one of the smartest presidents ever to take office as far as his understanding and knowledge of the tax law. And here's an example. This is actually what was said that night during the election. Let's take a listen.
Maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes, because the only years that anybody's ever seen were a couple of years when he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So if he's paid zero, that means zero for troops, zero for vets, zero for schools or health.
All right, I think you understand the game here. Now, what's funny to me is that the Clinton family does the same exact thing. This is the actual return of the Clinton Family Foundation. It is a 990 PF. It is a private, non-operating foundation treated as a trust. Okay? It is tax exempt private foundation. All right? Now, the wealthiest families in our country have done this for generations. And you know the family names. It's the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Kennedys, the Mellons, the Trumps, the Clintons, the Bushes, the Romneys. The list goes on and on. Now, these are America's richest families. People that live too large for mere mansions, so they live in compounds like in Cape Cod or Florida or Maine. You know, they're treated like American royalty. Their wealth has created literally family dynasties that last for years and decades and even generations. They built institutions that are named after them, like Vanderbilt University, the Rockefeller Center, or the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. So why is it that you never hear about one of these families going belly up or losing hundreds of millions of dollars in, the Great Depression, the crash of '87, the dot-com boom and bust of 2000, or the real estate crash of 2018? How come they never lose money? Well, the short answer is simple. They play by a different set of rules. You see, they don't leave their wealth up to the whims of the market, like what we talked about before. They don't gamble their wealth away in the markets. And they protect their wealth from obstacles that would erode their wealth over generations. Things like taxes, divorce, interest expense, inflation, and lawsuits. Those 5 evil forces that erode your wealth from generation to generation. They protect their wealth. So what separates us from them? Well, number one is they don't take risks at all. Instead, what they do is put their trust in these timeless financial principles, including tax law, federal contract law, and constitutional law. And that allows them to take advantage of wealth building opportunities to multiply their wealth, things that we've never heard of. They use these little known strategies that make these market crashes and gyrations, the volatility of the market that you see today, it's completely irrelevant to them. They don't even participate in that volatility. Their wealth continues to compound into perpetuity. They keep their wealth instead of losing most of their wealth while paying Uncle Sam, paying Uncle Sam through taxes. And they're able to grow their wealth and legacy so they can literally accomplish anything they want. While you and I dream of taking vacations, they actually buy islands. Richard Branson's another example of someone who uses the trust and foundation strategy. While we donate our time to hospitals, they actually build hospitals. Steven Spielberg built the Pediatric Research Center from his private foundation. John Hopkins was a famous Baltimore businessman who left his fortune of $7 million to his private family foundation, which turned around and built Johns Hopkins University and the Johns Hopkins Hospital. While we attend universities, they actually build colleges and universities. These colleges like Wells Fargo, like Wells College, which was named after Wells Fargo creator Henry Wells. He did the same thing through his foundation, through his trust and foundations. Rockefeller University was built from the capital inside of the Rockefeller Family Foundation. So the question is, do you think that these guys know something that we don't? While we follow institutions like Wall Street and bankers, we don't know what the richest families are doing because up till now, it's been kept a secret. No one knows these strategies until now. Think about this statistic. In 2012, at the height of the last economic crisis, $154 billion was sucked out of the markets in just 1 year. But during that same time frame, in 2012, the world's 100 richest people became $241 billion richer. Do you think that's a coincidence? So let me share with you the secret blueprint that politicians and the wealthy elite have been using for generations to grow their wealth. This is the same blueprint, same strategy that I use with my family to help these kids that are in foster care. I call it the purpose-driven blueprint. Now, this is not theory. This is not some strategy that we just made up. This has been used legally and ethically by myself and others for generations. These tax laws have been in place since the IRS was formed back in 1913. Now, I know this sounds strange, but in America, we have two different tax systems, and that's intentional. That's on purpose. We have the 1040 tax system, which most everybody out there is familiar with. That deals with personal income, business income, LLCs, S-corps, corporations. That all of that income falls on a 1040 form that you file with the IRS. But there's also the 1041 tax system. 1041 just refers to the actual tax return that you file with the IRS. Both of these systems have been around since 1913. Both of these systems have a top tax rate of 37%. But here's the difference, and this is something I want you to catch. On the 1040 system, you have to deal with capital gains tax of 15 to 25%. Not true on the 1041 system. On the 1040 system, you have to deal with state tax, which is also based on federal income tax. Not true on the 1041 system. And on the 1040 system, you have to deal with property tax. Not true on the 1041 system. And of course, on the 1040 system, you have to deal with estate tax and probate cost, which you don't have to deal with on the 1041 system. Now, how did this happen? How did we get so far away from these principles, these rules of the 1041 tax system? Well, it all boils down to this little known rule that's called the Rule of 97. And this is just a weird statistical anomaly that economists use when they're talking about demographic shifts in America, demographic shifts in our country. And it goes like this. In 1897, 97% of all Americans were business owners, entrepreneurs, and investors. They were employers. They created their own wealth, their own income. We generated our own family wealth. Only 3% of us were what they call apprentices or employees. They worked for the 97%. So that 3% worked for the 97%ers. Now, 100 years later, in 1997, those numbers flip-flopped, and only 3% of Americans actually owned their own business or were entrepreneurs or investors or employers. 97% of us went to work for corporate America. And here's how it happened. During the First World War and the Second World War, what happened was there were these demographic shifts where soldiers were coming home from war and going to work on the assembly line, going to work for companies because they wanted to achieve the American dream. They were leaving the farms, they were leaving their family businesses and going to work for other people. And so over that 100-year shift, that demographic shift, more and more people left their own businesses, left the farms, and went to go work for corporate America. Okay? Now, in 1913, the IRS was formed by the U.S. Treasury. And what happened was the government got together and the Congress got together and said, listen, we need to start collecting a little bit of tax from the citizens, from the employees, the people that are workers, because if we don't, we're not going to be able to build out the infrastructure of our country. We're not going to be able to build out the roads and bridges, the railway system, our health care, the hospitals, schools, education was becoming more of the norm. You know, it used to be that you were educated on the farm. Now people were actually going to school. And so they needed to be able to build out that infrastructure. And so they decided they were going to collect tax for the very first time in 1913. Here's what the income tax brackets looked like back in 1913. The bottom rate was only 1%. 1%. And that was for income earners, people who took personal income of $20,000 a year or more. Well, that was back in 1913. The equivalent of that money today, in today's dollars, is over $480,000 a year. So think about this for a second. If you made the equivalent of $480,000 a year back in 1913, you paid 1% tax. 1%. The highest bracket was only 7%, not 37% like it is today. And that was for income earners who made $500,000 a year or more. Well, $500,000 back in 1913 is the equivalent of over $12 million today. So think about that. If you made the equivalent of over $12 million in income back in 1913, you were only taxed at 7%, not 37% like it is today. So how is it that the tax rates in these marginal tax brackets got so high and became what they are today, where the bottom rate is 12% and the top rate is 37%? How is it possible? Well, during that demographic shift, that 100-year shift, Congress took full advantage of rewriting the tax code every chance they got. And even today, every single time there's a new administration or the tax code is up for change, Congress takes advantage of American workers and American citizens and income earners and changes the tax law to collect more and more tax from the people that are actually producing. Now, again, why is it that the wealthiest families don't have to pay tax like we do? Why is it that people like Warren Buffett say that his secretary pays more in tax than he does? Well, it's simple. It's because there are two different tax systems in America. And that's been on purpose. That's intentionally done. There's one for the wealthiest families and one for people like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Donald Trump. And then there's a totally different system for everybody else. And these two systems have been around. Again, this is not new. These two systems have been around since 1913. Both of them have a top tax bracket of 37%. But capital gains and state tax and ad valorem tax and estate tax and probate costs, those only fall on the 1040 system. Now, just to give you some perspective here, there are now what's arguably over 82,000 pages in the Internal Revenue Code. Now, a lot of tax professionals and experts will say that's not true because most of those pages are obsolete tax law. The only pages that really matter are the new tax law that's enforceable today. Makes sense? So that's still estimated to be about 12,000 to 17,000 pages in enforceable tax law today. But if you look at all of the tax code written over the entire history since 1913, it's over 82,000 pages in the tax code. Only 22 of those pages, have to deal with the 1041 trust and foundation system. Only 22. And so it's no wonder that judges who are tax experts in tax law, judges like Judge Billings Learned Hand, who died back in 1961, he served on the United States Court of Appeals in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. He's been quoted more frequently, more often by legal scholars and by the Supreme Court of the United States than any other judge as it pertains to tax matters. He said this. He said, in America, there are two tax systems, one for the informed and one for the uninformed, and both are legal. Both are legal. So you got to ask yourself, which tax system are you in? Are you in the one for the informed or the one for the uninformed? Now, these two tax systems have to do with ownership versus control. And I want you to think about this for a second. If you own something, then you're taxed on it. If you own something, you're taxed on it. Liability also follows ownership or title. If you own something, you're liable for it. And so you can be sued if something happens to somebody else on your property, for example. If you give up ownership of that thing, now that you're taxed differently, you're not taxed personally, and you're not falling under the 1040 tax system. You know, if you're in the 1040 tax system and you own everything, we're taught, trained, and educated in America that the way to build wealth is to own everything. We own land, property, cars, boats, vacation homes, everything. We want to own everything. But if you insist on owning everything, you're going to be taxed accordingly. Okay? Now, if you give up ownership to a trust, for example, to a separate entity, now you don't own it. And now that asset, that wealth is now protected through tried and true, impenetrable, powerful contract law and clauses. Similar to other problems that you can see that erode your wealth are things like inflation. You know, if you're holding wealth in the form of US dollars, you know that 3 to 4% per year of that wealth is being depreciated or is being lost. Can you mitigate that loss in the trust and foundation system? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Even alimony and child support. If you own the stuff, if you own your income, if you own your businesses, if you own your assets, all of that stuff is up for grabs during a divorce. I mean, think about it. The Kennedy family, every single member of the Kennedy family has been divorced and remarried multiple times. And if that's true, and in a divorce, you have to split your assets with your spouse, how is it possible that the Kennedy family is not penniless and out on the street today? If they have to divide their wealth every single time somebody has a divorce in the family, how are they not penniless? Well, it's because they don't own anything. They give up ownership of all of their assets, all of their income, all of their wealth to the trusts. And so let me explain to you how the 1041 tax system, the trust and foundation system, this philanthropic and generational legacy system actually works. Right now, you're taking on your own income and you own your own assets and you're focused on ownership, not control. But how does the wealthiest 1% of Americans always win? Well, what they do is they give up ownership, but they maintain control of the game. So you got to look and see, how is my business framework and structure? Are you renting an entity from your state? Is it a statutory entity? Do you have a statutory trust in place where it's actually owned by the state itself and you're just renting that EIN number? Or have you created an entirely independent entity? How do you hold your assets? How do you receive and draw your income? Are your businesses and real estate holdings and incomes structured in a way for tax efficiency? Now, why would you do this? Well, it's simple. Number one, it drastically reduces the personal, federal, state, and local taxes. You get total avoidance of capital gains tax, total avoidance of estate and inheritance tax, absolutely no probate costs, total protection of assets from lawsuits, judgments, and lawsuits, judgments, and creditors. All personal liabilities go away. Total protections of assets from divorces. Now, most of us grow up thinking that the key to wealth is to own everything. That's not always true. I used to believe the exact same thing until I had this mind shift, until I learned this information. And I had to stop asking myself, how am I going to own more stuff and build my wealth through ownership? And I had to ask myself, how am I going to learn the skill sets that I need to keep my money and multiply my wealth? And so key number 2, the way that you're currently being taught, trained, and educated to grow your wealth is really actually just holding you back. The key to collapsing time and growing your wealth faster is by keeping your wealth instead of leaking it out. And so one of the strategies that we teach people is how to collapse time. And so I want to give you an example of that. A client of mine named Roger came to me when he was 57 years old. He had built up his business from absolutely nothing, and the company was now valued at over $30 million. Now, Roger wanted to sell his business, but the problem that he had was that if he sold his business, he was scared to death of the capital gains tax, just that exposure to capital gains tax. So he was totally unhappy. He was like, literally came to me and he said, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to quit working, because as soon as I stop working and I sell my business, it's game over. I'm going to owe this massive amount of tax. But he still felt like he could reverse this and fix the problem. He just didn't know how to do it. So what we did was we created this structure of two trusts, a business trust, a family trust, and a private foundation, so that he could exit his business completely capital gains tax free. He was able to stop the bleeding from a tax perspective and keep that money and grow that wealth by creating his own banking system. Think about this. He was able to create his own banking system with that wealth, with no overhead, no building expense, no employee costs. And we did this all while protecting his money and his wealth against inflation, interest expense, lawsuits, judgments, creditors, loss, etc., in a trust and foundation structure. Another client of mine was a good friend. He's a real estate investor. His name's Mark, and he's invested in property that he bought for about 5 years ago. He bought it for $1.3 million. Today, he wanted to sell it for $6.5 million. So he had a $5.2 million capital gains tax exposure, and he was scared to death of that capital gains. We were able to eliminate the capital gains tax on this property. And what was cool was that he realized that he didn't have to do a 1031 exchange where he had to find a like-for-like property in a certain, 60-day requirement and close on that property in a certain amount of time. And this is true for anybody that is currently flipping real estate. If you're out there and you're flipping properties, you are subject to, and you have to 1031 those properties, you're subject to the 1031 rules, which means you have to find a like-for-like property, and you have a limited time in which you can actually find the next property and put that money back into the property. If you don't, you're taxed at the highest capital gains tax rate. With this system, no 1031 exchanges are needed anymore. There's no more property tax. Think about this. Being able to buy and sell real estate with no capital gains tax and absolutely no property tax. No more rental income tax either. All of those taxes go away. If you're in the real estate game, this is the ultimate way to play it. Another example I want to give you is some good friends of mine and clients, Nicole and Jason. Jason started an air conditioning business about 5 years ago, straight out of college. In year number one, it was worth about $80,000 in revenue. They were getting $80,000 of income. In year number two, that almost doubled. It was about $150,000 in revenue. Well, today, fast forward to today, they're generating over $1.4 million in revenue, in income on that business. And they have a $400,000 tax problem. $400,000 tax problem. But by doing the 1041 trust and foundation system, they were able to completely keep that money this year and next year and the year after that into perpetuity. They're able to keep all of those tax dollars. And what they're able to do with it is to take that money and fund their private foundation to help foster kiddos, just like my wife and I do. They love foster kiddos. They actually are fostering 2 kids right now. They plan on adopting them. They've got kids of their own. And that's where their heart is, where they give all of their time and energy and money and, just their emotion all goes into these kids, just like my wife and I. But more importantly is they're able to build their business and grow their business because they're able to keep all of that capital and put it to work back into the business. Now, we've also been able to help millennials, people like Preston. Preston is the son of a farm family, and this farm family has hundreds of millions of dollars worth of land. Now, his family's owned the land for generations and generations, and that's how it's grown in wealth, right? Is through that generational transfer. But here's the problem is that now they're scared to transfer that down to their kids because of probate and estate tax. their only solution so far, if you're a farmer out there, if you know anybody that's a farmer and you're faced with the same problem, the only solution out there right now that a CPA or tax professional will give you is to finance that purchase, to actually sell the property to the kids and finance the purchase through bank debt. What that does is it creates generational debt loads with their kids and grandkids that they now have to deal with. But by doing the 1041 system, 1041 trust and foundation system, now they can transfer that property completely outside of probate with no probate costs, no estate tax, completely tax-free. No more debt burdening future generations. The trustees of these trusts, you are a trustee of the trust. You enjoy total control over all of your income and assets, total protection against domestic and international incomes and assets. You can have money coming in from foreign countries, from businesses you're doing overseas, and all of that is protected in your trusts. The wealth stays in your bloodline from generation to generation. These entities are institutions and remain viable, protecting your incomes and assets from generation to generation. These income and assets remain totally protected from lawsuits, judgments, creditors, including government agencies like the IRS. This allows you to create philanthropic legacies and endowments where you can give back more in a more meaningful way. So you got to ask yourself, how are you protecting and keeping your wealth today? Do you buy into the notion of traditional trusts? Now here's the heads up. There are 86 different types of trusts in America. What type of trust do you have? There are AB trusts, there are grantor type trusts, there are revocable trusts, irrevocable trusts, there are real estate investment trusts, there are even irrevocable life insurance trusts, ILITs. Those are the traditional trusts, and all of those fall on the side of the 1040 system because they are all statutory in nature. Statutory meaning they are recorded and governed by state law. State law. Remember, CPAs, tax attorneys, and trust attorneys are only licensed at the state level. The only tools that they have in their tool bag are state laws and state regulations. And so for estate planning purposes, all they can create are statutory trusts. Do you leave your assets and your incomes at the mercy of bankers and rigged markets? Are you gambling your money away? Are you the one who leaves your hard-earned money in the bank, which earns less than 1% a year, in cash or CDs? Are you enabling banks to take that money and loan that money out at 400 to 1,300% ROI, lending your capital out to other people? Or are you the one who borrows from the bank for businesses, for expanding your business, for growing your business? Are you borrowing money for asset purchases or financing yours and your family's lifestyle, putting your hard-earned cash into the bank's coffers in the form of interest? Have you protected your liquid assets from inflation year after year after year, generation to generation? Now, I get it. You're probably thinking, okay, that's great and all, but that's how Warren Buffett and Bill and Melinda Gates do it, but that's not me. And if you're thinking that, you'd be wrong. The principle that you have to understand before shifting the tides is, first you got to protect and keep what you've built. Now, tax law, the laws of our country are for everybody, not just Bill and Melinda Gates, not just Warren Buffett, not just Donald Trump. The laws are over everybody in our country. But rule number one is you've got to keep what you've built. Remember, Warren Buffett said it best. It's not what you make, it's what you keep that matters. Now, the ultra rich understand that they're able to spend their money without ever having to dip into their savings or drop their savings down to zero. They're able to have their wealth grow and compound while still being able to enjoy themselves freely through this system. Key number 3. In order to build massive amounts of wealth, the first thing you have to learn how to do is give it all away. To build massive wealth, you must first learn how to give it all away. Remember our friend Nelson Rockefeller. Now, there are a lot of good books out there about what would the Rockefellers do. And I'm sure that you've seen them out there online or on the internet. What would the Rockefellers do? Unfortunately, they're not based in fact. You know, Nelson Rockefeller himself said these words: "The secret to success is to own nothing but to control everything." To own nothing but to control everything. So it has to do with ownership versus control. The Rockefeller family has been able to build their wealth by giving away or giving up ownership of their income, giving up ownership of their assets to their family trusts and their foundation. You see, traditional estate planning is just flawed. Estate planning is a method of focusing on ownership of assets and then distributing those assets to beneficiaries using just two-party contracts and trusts. Remember, there are 86 different types of trusts in America today. Most of those are just statutory in nature. And so estate planning attorneys focus on a complex structure of C Corps and S Corps and grantor type trusts. And what they do is they attempt to hide the money from Uncle Sam. They provide expensive estate planning setups that are still subject to scrutiny by the IRS and other government organizations, and they all ultimately fall back into the 1040 tax system. Now, it's also flawed because in this new economy, we can't predict the future. There's so much market volatility and uncertainty that it makes it impossible for you to plan for the future, as in retirement planning. Each new administration seems to change the rules of the game every single time. So how do you grow your assets? Well, first you got to know the golden rule. Never lose control of your capital. Never lose control of your capital. Don't lose control of your capital. You know, as business owners and entrepreneurs and investors, we're taught, trained, and educated that when you produce your wealth and you produce your income from your business or from your entrepreneurial efforts and you make money, the first thing we need to do is to turn around and give that money to somebody else, a broker who thinks that they can grow that wealth better than we can. That is the biggest mistake that we make as business owners and entrepreneurs, as producers. If you've built something substantial and you've gone from that level of scarcity where you had nothing and you've reached that level of abundance and you've stabilized abundance, why in the world would you give over control of your wealth to somebody else when you're the one that built that abundance in the first place? The second rule is we need to learn how to recapture our entire tax savings at every single level, at the county level, through school taxes and property taxes, at the state level through state income tax, and at the federal level, and turn that money around, capture that money and redirect it so that we can fund our legacy, so that we can build something of significance that will outlast us and will live on from generation to generation to generation. We need to be able to pay interest to ourselves first. You need to be able to finance your own business and finance your own asset purchases, your own lifestyle, and lend to others just like the banks do to you, and earn interest in the process. And we also need to guarantee the safety and security of our capital. That's what we need to do to grow our assets. So you can see it's no wonder that the state of American business owners and investors is dismal at best, and why only 2% of retired Americans are actually self-sustaining. Most of them still have to work or are dependent on charity or the government or dependent on relatives. And so for most families, most business owners, most entrepreneurs, they give up hope. They lose hope. They say, let's eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Now, the good news is that we can teach you what the elite 1% do. So instead of living like you were back in the Stone Ages or back in college, you can actually live out your golden years and even have a better quality of life than you did while you were working. I mean, think about the American dream, where you used to put in 20 or 30 years and then retire with a gold watch and a pension. And then you get to travel, then you get to enjoy your family, then you get to enjoy your golden years. And you know, you do all these things that you would have done while you were working and sacrificing. Well, the American dream died decades ago for most people. But the deal is, the reality is still an option for the 1%. Now, again, it's still an option for you if you make the decision to change how you look at keeping your money, growing your wealth, and building your legacy. Your dream doesn't have to be a dream that only the ultra rich get to live. So can you see why I'm so passionate about teaching this system? Myself and my wife, we actually set up our own foundation. We call it the Kind Foundation. And the mission and purpose of Kind Foundation is to help these kids heal from life's hurts, to help them heal from the trauma that that's been inflicted on them. And you can see this is our charitable organization. You can see the employee identification number here at the top, and you can see down here that it says Form 990-PF required. All right? This is the actual letter that was given to us by the IRS. This is a copy that they sent me on March 18th of last year. And it says simply this: Dear applicant, we are pleased to tell you that we have determined that you are exempt from federal income tax under IRC Section 501c3. 501c3 status is just the section of the tax code. It's Section 501, Paragraph C, subsection 3. That's all that means. It goes on to say that donors can deduct contributions that they make to you. You're also qualified to receive tax-deductible gifts, devices, transfers, or bequests. This letter could help resolve questions of your exempt status. Please keep it for your records. So you can see, this isn't just a dream that Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Donald Trump get to play. This is something that I've actually implemented with my own family, and you can do the same thing. This is the trust agreement of the foundation. Remember that when they file a 990-PF, it is a trust treated as a private foundation. And so every trust is deemed, it has to have a trust agreement or a documentation or a contract. A trust is simply a three-party contract. You can see that this agreement is creating the Kind Foundation in Williamson County, Texas, in December of 17 between myself and my wife as founders and myself and my wife as trustees. So think about that. When you implement these strategies, you become two different people. You are an individual with a social security number, and you're also a trustee that is the fiduciary or the manager of the trust. You can see the EIN number is the same EIN number, and it's exclusively created for charitable, religious, scientific, literary, educational purposes, including such purposes as the making of distributions to organizations that qualify under 501c3, meaning we can give gifts and grants to other 501c3 or tax-exempt organizations or other public charities. This is the actual 990-PF, Return of Private Foundation, for the Kind Foundation. You can see this was filed in 2017. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you out there feel like you've learned a ton so far? Do me a favor. In the bottom, in the field below, message me in the comments section. Tell me if you feel like you've learned a ton. If it's been worth it so far. If it's been useful information. Now, how many of you, by commenting below, comment below and tell me, are you feeling a little bit overwhelmed? Because it's just been so much information. Now, in the past hour, wouldn't you agree that it's been time well spent so far? Now, I know that I can't cover everything you need in this one webinar. And I probably couldn't cover it if we had all day. So would it be okay if I spent the next 10 minutes just going over this special offer? You've waited this long. Let me just share with you this special offer that I've came up with so that you can actually implement all of this in your own family. I want to introduce you to the Purpose-Driven Blueprint. Now, Purpose-Driven Blueprint is a system that I created out of necessity. All right? And here's what you're going to get. If you decide to jump in today and make the commitment that you want to shift your gears and shift over to this system and make this one simple decision, here's what you're going to get. Number one, you're going to get the Purpose-Driven Blueprint, which is an actual blueprint that you and I go over and customize for yourself and your family and your legacy. We talk about everything that you're passionate about. What are your passions? What are your unique talents and gifts and abilities? What are your values? Where those values handed down to you by your parents or grandparents, or do you have your own value system? What are your beliefs about what is possible for you and your family? We take all of that information and we compile a mission and purpose statement, which is the central focus of everything that you're going to be driving for and doing in the future with your family. That blueprint is worth $497, and I'm going to be giving that away to you for free. If you jump in today, I'm also going to give a thorough analysis, a one-on-one review of your current state of wealth and what I call your purpose, your personal economy. Your personal economy is everything. It's all of your money, your income, your assets, your liabilities, everything. And that analysis is worth $2,497. That consultation fee is free. You're also going to get 12 months of exclusive mentorship access to a private network of legal and professional advisors, including myself and my team. That's a $5,000 retainer fee that we're going to waive for you when you join and jump into this group. You're also going to get access for the first year, 12 months access to a library of videos and training sessions with that private network of professional advisors. That's a $1,000 value. You're going to get that for free. And if you decide to move forward and you decide to set up your trusts and foundations, normally the cost of setting everything up is $60,000 or more just to set those entities up and structure the contracts and work with the attorneys. Those are the attorney's fees. But if you jump into the Purpose Driven Blueprint offer, you're going to get $12,000 off, 20% reduction, a $12,000 value, totally free. The total value you're going to get today is worth $20,491. $20,491. Now, I realize that information alone is not going to work for you. And so, who has this system worked for in the past? Well, we've worked with business owners who built their businesses from nothing and want to exit their businesses tax-free. We've also worked with real estate investors who are exposed to capital gains tax and are trying to play the 1031 exchange game, flipping properties. They get to keep all of those tax dollars. We've also worked with investors who've built their portfolio up and want to pass their wealth on to their children without the government grabbing half of it. It's also worked for myself and my family. We've actually been able to keep our tax dollars and grow our wealth so that we can give back more in a more meaningful way through our foundation, through Kind Foundation, and to help kids heal from life's hurts. Now, I get it. Old habits die hard. And I had two choices when I was coming up with this offer. The first option was I could price it really, really low and just give you the information and sign up as many people as I could and make a bunch of money. But I understood that wouldn't be as powerful as I wanted it to be. I wouldn't be able to help as many people as I really wanted to help. The second option requires a little bit more of an upfront investment on your part, but in exchange, you get a ton more free resources and value so that we can make sure that you succeed, so we can hold your hand and make sure that every single step of the way you're implementing this stuff correctly and you have a team of professionals that's guiding and coaching and leading you so you're not flopping in the breeze out there on your own. Now, what do the wealthy say about this system? Well, this is a perfect quote from the Rothschild brothers of London. They said, "The few who understand this system will be so interested in its profits and the rest so dependent on its favors that there will be no opposition from either class." Here's some feedback that I've gotten from a lot of clients of mine. This is from Preston. He said, "Sean will walk you through the steps to take your money back from the greedy banks, back into your own control, back into your personal banking system. Not only that, but you'll make a friend for life because Sean genuinely cares about your success. I've never met a more selfless, genuine, helpful person in my life, and you won't either." Vishal is a major airline pilot who's working with us, and Vishal's story is really powerful. He said this, he said, "Because of working with Sean, I now have improved confidence that I can weather the financial storms that may arise over the next 10 or 20 years by being smart about my money and investing now using Sean's connections and alternative investment strategies." And so again, here's what you're going to get. If you decide to make the commitment and invest in yourself, you're going to get the purpose-driven blueprint. That's a $500 value, free. You're going to get a thorough analysis and review of your current state of wealth and personal economy. And I'm going to generate an income report that will show you that everything that you've done up to this point, how much income that will generate for you at retirement. That consultation, that analysis is worth $2,500. You're going to get that for free. You're also going to get 12 months of exclusive mentorship and access to our private network of legal and professional advisors to guide and coach and direct you. That retainer that they normally charge is worth $5,000. You're going to get that waived. You're also going to get 12 months access to our library of videos, training sessions within that private network. Those videos, that library of videos and content is worth about $1,000. You're going to get that for free. And of course, if you move forward and want to set up your trust and foundations, you're going to get 20% off the setup fee. That setup fee is normally $60,000. They're going to knock $12,000 off that fee. The total value you're going to get today is $20,491. Now, I got a question to ask you. If all this did was increase your bottom line, your income, by 40% or more by making one simple change, would it be worth it to you? If all this did was helped you to grow your wealth and multiply your wealth more effectively, would it be worth it to you? If all this did was help you to save 60, 70, 80, 90, or 95% or more in taxes, would it be worth it to you? And so think about that number for a second. What is that worth to you? How much did you pay in taxes last year? Was it $10,000, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000? What did you pay in property taxes? What did you pay in state taxes, county taxes, federal taxes, business taxes? All of those taxes added up. How much did you have to pay last year? What will you have to pay this year? How much would you pay to learn these strategies? How much of that money, that tax dollars, would you pay to start this system, to learn this stuff and start this system? Now, I have a personal coaching program, a one-on-one coaching program that I do for business owners, entrepreneurs, and investors. And if you're interested in that, let me know. It's $12,500. It's a 3-month coaching program. It's half up front and half as we go for 3 months. That's one-on-one coaching, all right? If you're interested in that, let me know. It's $12,500. But if I was able to save you 70, 80, 90, 95% in taxes or more, imagine what you could do with that money. What kind of lifestyle could you enjoy? What kind of contributions could you make to your church or your favorite charities? What kind of investments could you make? How could you use that capital to build your business, grow your business, and multiply your efforts? Now, you can see why this would be a great deal at just $5,000. This education alone, today's training, is worth at least $5,000. Now, for the general public, I normally charge $29.97, almost $3,000 for this information. But because you've committed to learning this stuff and you've waited for this long, gone through this webinar, here's what I'm willing to do. You can get started right now today for just $1,997, $1,997 today. Here's what I want you to do next. I want you to apply for membership access at purposedrivenblueprint.org. When you go to purposedrivenblueprint.org, you'll be taken to this page right here, okay? Up at the top, you can see this same workshop where I drill down a little bit more on the information. The second page here is the Apply Now button. I want you to hit the Apply Now button and fill out this application. Here's what the application looks like. You're going to put your name, your email, all of this information about your current situation and click Commit to Your Future. Hit this button at the bottom here and commit to your future. Okay? Now, you have two options. You have two choices. The first choice is you can do absolutely nothing. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep going down the same path. that option is 100% risk-free. You know, I've had a lot of people that I've talked to where this just wasn't a fit and they've continued down the same path. They're still paying the same level of taxes. They're still leaking money in their personal economy. They're still not growing their wealth, and they still have no legacy. You can do the same thing. That's 100% risk-free. The second option is that you can join us with just a small investment today compared to all of the value that you're going to get to build a better today and tomorrow. That option is also risk-free. So if you don't absolutely love this, you won't be charged at all. We'll have a meeting. If it's a fit, you'll move forward and you'll commit with your payment. If it's not a fit, it's risk-free. We're not going to charge you anything. So which risk-free option do you want? Again, here's the no risk guarantee. If you apply today and you don't like it for any reason, if you don't qualify, we're not going to charge you anything. All right? So do this. Get started now. Go to purposedrivenblueprint.org, fill out the application. I'll get a notification. We'll set up a meeting where we can talk about your situation, where you're at today, and where you want to go, what the current problems are in your world today, the pain that's related to those problems, you know, the ineffectiveness that you've got right now because your system isn't working effectively, and then the possibilities of what it could look like if you shifted gears and just took this path and took this program to heart. Again, here's what you're going to get. You're going to get the Purpose Driven Blueprint, a $497 value, totally free. You're going to get a thorough one-on-one analysis and review of your current personal economy and a projection of your income at retirement and what it could look like if you shifted gears. That consultation is $24.97. You get that completely waived. You're also going to get 12 months of exclusive mentorship and access through a private network of legal and professional advisors, including myself and my team. That's a $5,000 retainer value, $49.97. You get that completely waived. You're going to get 12-month access to our library of videos and trainings. We're going to be doing live trainings on a monthly basis inside of that network. That's a $1,000 access, $1,000 value, $997. You get that completely free. And if you decide to take the next step and move forward, you're going to get 20% off of the setup price. The setup price is normally $60,000. You're going to get $12,000 knocked off of that price. All of that value, everything you're going to get today is worth $20,491. $20,491 of value, and all of that's going to get waived. Now, here's the deal. I've had several clients come to me, and we've had one-on-one discussions, one-on-one meetings, and they decided not to commit, not to move forward, not to change the path that they're on today. And here's the reality is they're still being hunted by the IRS. They're being hunted by the IRS. Their tax liability is through the roof. They're still subject to lawsuits. They're still subject to divorces in many cases. Their spouse is coming after them for 50% of what they've built, what they've created. They're still leaking money through inflation and interest expense and all of those different factors that erode and deplete your wealth. And then there are other clients that decided to step into the gap and walk down the path of financial freedom and legacy. They decided to move forward with the purpose-driven blueprint. And they're living lives that are completely unrecognizable today. If you ask these clients where they were a year ago and where they are today, their lives today are unrecognizable. They don't even recognize the people and the families that they used to be. Now, here's the reality. I'm not better than you are. I'm not better than anyone else out there. I was not born as a trust fund baby. I was not born and I did not grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. My family was very middle class. My dad was an electrical engineer. My mom was a medical technologist. They worked very, very hard to provide for the family. They did exactly what everybody else taught, trained, and educated them and told them what to do. They're CPAs. They paid tax according to what their CPA told them. Their estates that they set up were only at the state level and didn't protect what they built. All right? But I'm not better than anybody else. I've had to learn this stuff the hard way. And so again, let me show you the path. Let me teach this stuff to you and put you in place where you can learn this stuff and embrace it and move forward and build a legacy that matters. Go to the purposedrivenblueprint.org webpage and click that Apply Now link. Fill out the application. We'll have a one-on-one meeting and we'll just see if this is a fit. If it's a fit, we'll charge your credit card. If it's not a fit, no harm, no foul. Again, there's no risk. It's 100% risk-free. Go to purposedrivenblueprint.org, fill out that application, and I look forward to seeing you inside. Again, what you're going to get is the Purpose Driven Blueprint, a roadmap on how to get from where you are today to where you want to be. You're going to get a thorough analysis and review of where you're at today as far as your personal economy, how much income it would produce for you currently if you stay on the same path versus if you switched gears and jumped over to this new path. And that analysis is worth $24.97. You're going to get that for free. You're going to get 12 months of mentorship access to a private network of legal and professional advisors, including myself and my team. That's $5,000 retainer fee waived. You're going to get 12-month access to our library of videos and training sessions, $997 value, completely free. You're going to get 20% off the setup price, $60,000 setup price. You're going to get $12,000 of value knocked off, $12,000 knocked off. The total value today is worth $20,491. You're going to get all of that for the introductory, limited time only, one-time fee of $19.97. One-time investment of $19.97. So do yourself a favor. Invest in yourself. Invest in your business. Invest in your family. Invest in your legacy. Go to purposedrivenblueprint.org and hit the Apply Now button. I look forward to seeing you on the inside.